and welcome to Know It Training's IT Security course. During this course, you'll learn about the many security threats that exist in the world of IT. You'll learn about the technologies that have evolved to combat these threats, and you'll see how companies use these technologies to secure their networks, devices, and data. IT security is the protection of computer systems from the theft or corruption of data, or damage to hardware and software. Okay, so what? Why is that important? Well, imagine waking up tomorrow to find that your email account had been hacked and every one of your emails had been posted online for the whole world to see. Scary? Of course it is. And the scariest part is, scenarios like this do happen. In fact, hacks or security breaches happen all the time. In 2013, Target's network was hacked, exposing the credit card information of 110 million shoppers. In 2014, an attack on JP Chase compromised over 83 million bank accounts. And perhaps most famously, in 2016, the Gmail account of Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman was hacked, and the thousands of emails it contained were posted online. With headlines like these, it should come as no surprise that IT security has become a top concern for business and technology leaders around the globe. In order to understand how IT security works, let's first look at the kinds of threats that exist. Malware is software designed to disrupt computer operations, steal sensitive information, or gain unauthorized access to private computer systems. Two common forms of malware are computer viruses and worms. A computer virus is a code fragment that attaches itself to an existing program and is able to reproduce by copying itself. Each time the host program is run, the virus springs into action, spreading to more computers on the network. Viruses almost always corrupt or modify files on an infected computer. A computer worm is a standalone program that doesn't need to attach itself to an existing program. Worms almost always cause at least some harm to the network, even if only by consuming bandwidth. In a denial-of-service attack, a company's website is overwhelmed by more traffic than its infrastructure can handle. This type of attack would be easy to stop if it were coming from just one device. A company could simply block the device's IP address. But denial-of-service attacks have evolved. Now hackers infect hundreds, sometimes thousands of devices, such as computers and DVRs, or pretty much anything with an IP address, with a virus or a worm. At a predetermined time, the malware launches the attack from the infected devices. In this way, the attack comes from so many IP addresses that it can't easily be stopped. Social engineering attacks are also hard to stop. This is because rather than using sophisticated technologies, social engineering uses deception to break into computer systems. If a company has 10,000 employees, then the hackers have 10,000 potential targets, and they only need one or two of those employees to make a mistake to succeed in their attack. One technique hackers use is to find personal details about employees online, then use those details to create phishing emails. Phishing emails trick employees into giving up their usernames and passwords or downloading malware by clicking links. If an employee posts a comment online about their upcoming vacation to Las Vegas, hackers might compose a phishing email that says something like, "Confirm your hotel reservations for your upcoming trip." They then provide a link that looks like it might be from Travelocity or a reputable hotel chain. Then when the user clicks the link, malware is downloaded and the attack is successful. There are many IT security threats out there, and every year the number of threats gets bigger. These threats keep business and IT leaders up at night. With so much to worry about, I'm sure they're tempted to take the ultimate security measure and just block all traffic in and out of their company networks. But they can't, because companies can't operate like that. If no traffic was allowed in or out of a company's network, then employees couldn't receive email from customers and vendors or access online resources to do their jobs. If companies like Amazon and Citibank didn't allow traffic to enter or leave their networks, then customers wouldn't be able to visit Amazon's webpage to buy products or pull up their Citibank accounts online to pay bills or make transfers. So companies have to find other ways to handle IT security. Let's take a look at how it's done. The security of a network starts with its architecture. A lot of problems can be avoided by setting up that architecture properly. Looking at a typical company network from the outside in, at the edge of the network is a firewall. Since it's on the edge or perimeter of the network, it's called the perimeter firewall. Next is one or more switches, and then another firewall. The space between these firewalls is called the demilitarized zone, or DMZ. The DMZ is where you put things you want almost anyone to have access to. In this space, most companies put their mail server, web server, and DNS server so that anyone on the internet can visit a company's web page, send email to its employees, or obtain IP addresses for web pages. The perimeter firewall lets most traffic into the network, but does filter traffic based on three things: ports, protocols, and IP addresses. A physical port is an opening in computers, servers, and other devices where communication cables can be plugged in to allow the flow of data between devices. We're all familiar with USB, Ethernet, and HDMI ports, but there are also virtual ports. Servers have over 65,000 virtual ports, and those virtual ports also allow data to flow through them. But each one is an opportunity for a hacker to gain entry. So it's become standard in the IT world that only specific types of communications, or services, are allowed on specific ports. For example, all email is allowed on port 25. Email attempting to come into a port other than port 25 is blocked by the firewall. This gives IT organizations some level of control and allows them to configure certain ports in ways that can more securely handle specific types of traffic. While protocols are necessary in IT and serve a critical purpose, some protocols can be used to bypass security measures. So firewalls can be configured to block specific protocols that are a security risk. As traffic enters the firewall, the packets of data that make up that traffic are inspected. The firewall then blocks packets formatted with unwanted protocols. Firewalls can also block IP addresses, so if an attack is known to have come from a specific IP address, traffic from that IP address can simply be disallowed. Firewalls can also be configured to block a range of IP addresses or IP addresses from a particular geographic region. The second firewall is the back-end firewall. This firewall is more restrictive, meaning it lets only certain traffic through. Behind this firewall is the space where a company places things it wants to limit access to, like database servers, application servers, or users' computers. But things behind the back-end firewall are not entirely cut off from the outside world. For example, if a user on the internet wants to access their account to update their credit card information, the perimeter firewall would allow their communication with the web server. The web server then connects with the database server, where the user account is stored. Since the web server is inside the network, the back-end firewall allows this connection. The database server communicates the account information to the web server, and the web server sends that information to the user. The user who is outside of the network does get access to the web server and ultimately gets access to his or her account information on the database server. But the user never communicates directly with the database server. In this way, devices in the DMZ are used as intermediaries for traffic that originates outside of the network. Traffic that is initiated from inside the network is handled in another way. Your computer is probably behind the back-end firewall, so devices outside of your network shouldn't be able to communicate directly with it. However, if you type www.espn.com into your web browser, the firewall allows the response, which is ESPN's webpage, to come directly back to your computer. Here's why. When your computer sends a message to ESPN's web server requesting the web page, the back-end firewall creates a log entry of that message. When ESPN's web server responds by sending you their web page, the message from ESPN is received by the back-end firewall. The firewall compares it to the message log, and when it sees that you initiated that traffic, it allows the message to pass through to your computer. Firewalls that track outgoing traffic and match it to incoming traffic are called stateful firewalls. So firewalls make sure traffic is going to the appropriate ports. They keep unwanted and potentially harmful protocols out of the network, and they block the IP addresses from which attacks such as malware are known to have come. But they don't detect attempted intrusions, like viruses or worms. That function is handled by intrusion prevention devices. Intrusion prevention devices, or IPDs, are devices or software applications that monitor a network or computer system for things like viruses, worms, and other types of malware. IPDs can be installed in the network to monitor and inspect network traffic. Malware, like any other software, is made up of binary code, or ones and zeros, and each has a particular pattern of ones and zeros called a signature. Intrusion prevention devices have their own databases that contain the signatures of all the known malware. When a new piece of malware is identified, its signature is uploaded to this database through updates. As traffic passes through the IPD, each packet is inspected to see if it contains malware. The IPD compares the signature of the code in each packet with the signatures of known malware stored in its database. If a packet contains a virus or some other form of malware, the IPD can notify the firewall, which can then block the IP address where the traffic originated, stopping the attack. There is a second type of intrusion protection called host protection. Host protection is intrusion protection that runs on an individual computer or server. Typically, this is a security software from a company like Norton, Kaspersky, or Intel Security. Host protection works in much the same way as an IPD. It inspects the data in each packet the computer or server receives. If the host protection software spots malware in the packet, it takes action to protect the machine. The one weakness that both IPDs and host protection share is that they can only detect malware that has been used by hackers before and identified as malware. When a new piece of malware is used for the first time, this is called a zero-day attack. IPDs and host protection can't help you if you're hit with a zero-day attack, but IT security professionals have come up with an interesting way to gain the advantage here. They set up a decoy called a honeypot. IT professionals have learned the hard way that being the victim of a zero-day attack isn't much fun. So they developed the concept of a honeypot to try to gain the upper hand with hackers. This is how it works. IT organizations will set up a new server, but this server is only a decoy. They put all sorts of fake information on the honeypot server. The fake information is meant to entice hackers to attack it. The honeypot is monitored so data can be collected, and the server is isolated so that no harm can be done to the rest of the network. When hackers attack this honeypot server, the information they get is all fake, so they get nothing of value. In the process, the hackers expose their methods and techniques for gaining entry into computer networks and systems. And if it's a zero-day attack, then the hackers have also exposed the signature of their brand new malware. Now that signature can be uploaded into the databases of IPDs and host protection, allowing companies to protect their systems from this new threat. Data is valuable. It's one of the prizes hackers are after when they attack a network or computer system. And although data can be protected with layers of security while it's inside a company's network, when data is sent from one network to another, it can be easily intercepted by third parties. The primary way of protecting data when it's being transmitted is encryption. Encryption means changing the form of data so that its meaning is hidden. The old method of encrypting was to come up with an alternate set of symbols to represent letters and numbers like a secret code. When you encrypted a message, you used the alternate symbols to replace the letters of the actual message. The actual letters and alternate symbols that represent them are recorded on a key. If both the sender and the receiver of the message have the key, the message can be coded by the person sending it and decoded by the person receiving it. The problem with this sort of encryption is that both parties must have the key, so the key must be sent at some point to the receiver. If the data in the message can be intercepted, then so can the key. If a third party gets their hands on the key, they can decode or unencrypt the message and the data is exposed. When a message can be unencrypted with the same key used to encrypt it, we call that symmetrical encryption. But a new kind of encryption has solved this problem, called public key encryption. With public key encryption, an algorithm is used to generate two keys for an individual. The public key can encrypt data, but only the private key can unencrypt it. One individual owns both keys. He or she can send their public key to anyone or even publish it on the internet, but they keep the private key secret. Now anyone can use their public key to send them an encrypted message, but only the person in possession of the private key can unencrypt it. But hackers are tricky, creative, and motivated. And sooner or later, everyone gets hacked, exposing systems and equipment to damage, leaving valuable data open to theft or corruption, and in extreme cases, bring IT operations to a grinding halt. This is just the reality we live in. The last line of defense is to back up your critical data and have redundancy and a recovery plan for your IT infrastructure. Backing up your data means making a copy or copies of it to be used to restore your data in the event that it is lost or corrupted. Computers and servers can have backup software loaded on them to allow data to be backed up automatically and on a regular basis. Redundancy means having multiple devices and systems that serve the same purpose. If a server stops functioning, a redundant server can take its place. If a firewall, switch, or any other piece of IT infrastructure goes down, the traffic it would have handled can be rerouted through redundant devices. Finally, a recovery plan is critical in the event of a catastrophic failure. If enough of a company's infrastructure goes down to halt IT operations, a recovery plan is the roadmap to restored networks and systems, and getting IT operations back up and running with as little impact to the business as possible. Well, that's the end of this course. You've learned about the many security threats that exist. You've learned about the technologies that have evolved to combat these threats, and you've seen how companies use these technologies to secure their networks, devices, and data. In our next course, Project Management, you'll learn about the standard methodologies that govern project management and how these methodologies are put into practice to successfully deliver IT projects. See you next time!